All right, let's get real. Ever notice how some people just love to test your boundaries? They interrupt, make passive-aggressive comments, or act like your time and feelings are optional, and we're supposed to just smile and let it slide? Not today. If you're done putting up with people who don't respect you, this video is for you. Today, I'm breaking down brutally honest, maybe a little controversial ways to handle disrespect without losing your cool and without sacrificing your self-respect. So buckle up, because by the end of this, you'll have every tool you need to show people exactly where the line is drawn. Let's dive in. 1. Embrace the silent stare. All right, let's start with one of my all-time favorite slightly savage techniques, the silent stare. Now you might be thinking, really? Just staring? Yes. Trust me on this. When someone's being openly rude or disrespectful, nothing throws them off more than a long, calm, completely unbothered stare. Here's why it works. People who disrespect others are usually looking for a reaction. They want you to stammer, get flustered, maybe even snap back. They're looking to drag you into their drama, to make you question yourself or feel small. But when you just look at them, no words, no expressions, suddenly the power dynamic flips. Now, I get it. This might sound a little passive-aggressive, but hear me out. There's something deeply unsettling about someone who doesn't give the reaction they were expecting. When you hold a steady, silent stare, you're saying without a word, "I'm not playing this game with you." It's a way of reclaiming control without even lifting a finger. And sometimes that silent stare is the clearest, most powerful no you'll ever say. Let me tell you about a time this technique worked like magic. I was in a group meeting where one guy kept talking over me, cutting me off like he was on a mission. You know the type. Loud, overconfident, thinking everyone's there to listen to his wisdom. I tried interjecting, tried being polite, but he wouldn't stop. So finally, I just looked at him. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and held his gaze. No blinking, no expression, just stared. For 5 solid seconds, I said nothing. You could feel the tension build, and the best part, everyone else at the table started looking at him too, wondering what he'd do. You know what happened? He got uncomfortable, stumbled over his words, and suddenly looked anywhere but at me. Didn't interrupt me for the rest of the meeting. That silent stare did more than any words could have. And it didn't just stop his behavior in the moment. He actually started treating me with more respect after that, as if he'd finally realized I wasn't someone he could just bulldoze. Sometimes you have to show people who you are without saying a word. Let's dig a little deeper, because this is more than just a power move. When you embrace the silent stare, it's like a reminder to them and to yourself that you don't have to dance to someone else's tune. You don't owe anyone an emotional reaction, and you don't have to prove yourself to people who don't see your worth. This is about reclaiming your space, your peace, and your dignity. Too often, when someone is disrespectful, we feel an urge to defend ourselves, to make our case, or worse, to let it slide because we don't want to create a scene. But the silent stare, it's not about being aggressive, it's about showing that you're grounded, unbothered, and unapologetically in control of your own emotions. It's also about accountability. People who are used to disrespecting others often do it without even thinking. They've never been called out, never faced real consequences for treating others poorly. When you give them that silent, deadpan look, it's like you're holding up a mirror. Suddenly, they're left alone with their own behavior. You're not telling them they're wrong, you're showing them. And most people don't like to see themselves like that. That's why this works. I've noticed that this silent stare tactic does more than just get the other person to back off. It also strengthens your sense of self-worth. When you stand there, silent and still, you're reminding yourself that their words or actions can't shake you. I used to be the type who'd nervously laugh off rude comments or try to explain myself when someone questioned my choices. But honestly, That just drained my energy and made me feel worse. Learning to just look at someone, to let that silence fill the room without backing down, was a game changer. It feels like a small act of defiance, a quiet but powerful declaration of self-respect. So, if someone's being rude, pushing boundaries, or making you feel less than, try the silent stare. Just look at them. Let them feel the weight of your calm. You'll be surprised at how uncomfortable it makes them and how empowered it makes you feel. The silent stare says, "I respect myself too much to get dragged into your negativity," and that's a message worth sending. 2. Embrace silence as your answer. Here's a little secret weapon that's incredibly underrated: silence. When someone disrespects you, one of the most powerful responses is no response at all. Now I know what you're thinking. Silence feels passive, almost like you're letting them get away with it, right? But here's the truth. Silence is far from passive. It's a choice, and sometimes it's the boldest, loudest answer you can give. When someone's throwing negativity at you, they're trying to pull you into their drama, to make you feel small or defensive. But when you don't engage, when you just let their words hang in the air without responding, it forces them to sit alone with their own behavior. And that silence, it's deafening. Now here's why this works so well. People who disrespect others usually expect a reaction. They're looking for a fight, a justification, or just some kind of validation for their own behavior. But silence says, "I'm not giving you my energy." By not engaging, you're keeping control of the conversation and letting them know, "I'm not here to entertain your disrespect." Sometimes, the most powerful way to communicate is by not communicating. It's a quiet, subtle reminder that they're not worth your time or words. I remember once being in a situation with someone who just couldn't resist making these little digs. You know, the kind of person who hides their insults as jokes and tries to pass it off as harmless fun. So one day, he says something completely unnecessary about my work, clearly just to get a rise out of me. Normally, I would have tried to explain myself or maybe even fired back a comment, but this time, I just looked at him, raised an eyebrow and said, "Absolutely nothing." I let his words hang in the air, let him feel that awkward, silent pause. And you know what? He didn't know what to do. He looked at me, then looked down, mumbled something and moved on. That moment was the last time he tried pulling that with me. It was like he realized that if I wasn't reacting, there was no power to be gained. And that's the beauty of silence. It starves disrespect of the attention it craves. Here's the deeper message. When you choose silence, you're choosing yourself. You're saying, "I value my peace over your opinion of me." And that's not just empowering, it's revolutionary. So often, we feel pressured to respond, to explain ourselves, to defend our choices or prove our worth to people who frankly aren't interested in respecting us. But by embracing silence, you're refusing to play by their rules. You're taking a stand without lifting a finger. You're letting them know you're not worth my words. And it's not just about controlling the situation, it's about reclaiming your energy. Silence is like a filter. It keeps your peace intact by blocking out the negativity that others try to project onto you. The moment you stop feeling the need to respond to every rude comment, every passive-aggressive jab, you free yourself. You stop giving people access to your inner world, and you start living on your own terms. I'll be real with you. Learning to use silence wasn't easy for me. I used to think that if I didn't defend myself, I'd look weak or passive. But I started noticing something interesting. Every time I responded to people who disrespected me, I'd end up drained and frustrated. But when I held my tongue, when I let their comments pass by like white noise, I realized that I felt lighter, stronger, more in control. It's like I took back a piece of my power every time I chose silence over reaction. So here's my challenge to you. The next time someone disrespects you, just pause. Take a deep breath, look them in the eye, and say nothing. Let your silence speak for itself. You might be surprised by how uncomfortable they get and how freeing it feels for you. Embrace silence as your answer, because sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful statement of all. 3. Stop explaining your choices. All right, this one's gonna hit home for a lot of us. Stop explaining your choices. Seriously, how many times have you made a decision for yourself only for someone to immediately start asking you why? Why did you do that? Why didn't you go to that event? Why'd you take that job? People seem to think they're entitled to an explanation for everything we do. And here's the honest truth. They're not. Your choices are your own, and you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you live your life. It might sound controversial, but let's face it. If someone's questioning your choices, they're often not looking to understand. They're looking to judge. They're looking to poke holes, to make you doubt yourself, or to feel better about their own decisions by making you second-guess yours. And you know what? You don't have to play along. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim your autonomy and show them that your life isn't up for debate. Let's dig a bit deeper into why people feel so entitled to an explanation in the first place. When people question your choices, it's often because your decision challenges their view of the world. Maybe you're taking a risk they're too scared to take, or maybe you're stepping out of the norm they find so comforting. Your independence or willingness to do things differently can make them uncomfortable, and asking you to explain is their way of trying to fit you back into their comfort zone. But here's the kicker. Just because they're uncomfortable doesn't mean you're responsible for reassuring them. Your life isn't a public service announcement. You don't have to justify your choices to anyone. I remember when I decided to switch careers, moving from a safe job to something I was actually passionate about, but that came with a lot more risk. The moment people found out, it was like I'd announced I was moving to Mars. I kept getting asked, "Why would you leave a stable job?" And "How are you going to make it work?" At first, I'd try to explain, talk about how I wanted something more fulfilling, about how I had a plan. But I quickly realized that no matter what I said, it never felt like enough. The more I explained, the more people questioned me, poking holes and making me feel like I needed to prove myself. Then one day, I decided to try something new. When someone asked, "But why would you leave that job?" I simply replied, "Because I wanted to." No extra details, no breakdown of my strategy, just a simple answer. And let me tell you, it felt amazing. The silence that followed was everything. People didn't know how to respond because I'd taken away their power to question my choices. And you know what? They eventually stopped asking. Here's the real beauty of not explaining yourself. It's freeing. It's you standing in your own truth, knowing that your decisions are enough, simply because you've made them. When you stop justifying your actions, you give yourself permission to live authentically without the weight of other people's expectations. You stop wasting your energy on explanations and you start pouring it into actually living the life you want. There's a powerful lesson here. Your life doesn't need an audience vote. Not every decision has to be analyzed or approved by others. And when you stop explaining yourself, you're letting people know, "I'm confident enough in my choices that I don't need your approval." Think about it. When was the last time you saw a truly confident person breaking down their decisions for others? Probably never, because people who own their lives don't need external validation. They know that the only approval that matters is their own. Look, I've been there. I used to be the person who'd give a full PowerPoint presentation on why I was doing something just to get people on board. But over time, I realized that explaining myself to everyone was only making me second-guess my choices. So I made a pact with myself. If someone asks me about a decision, I'll answer briefly, maybe give a sentence or two. If they push for more, I smile and move on. And you know what? Life got a lot lighter. The more I stopped explaining, the more confident I became in my own decisions. So here's my challenge to you. The next time someone questions your choices, resist the urge to explain. Just say, "Because I wanted to," or "That's what felt right for me." Then let the silence speak. Watch how powerful that simple statement is. You'll feel stronger, more in control, and more at peace with yourself. And the best part, you'll realize that your choices don't need anyone else's stamp of approval. They're valid, simply because you made them. 4. Keep your distance. Let's be real, sometimes the best way to handle people who don't respect you is to just keep your distance. I know it sounds harsh, maybe even a little cold, but here's the hard truth. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. And if someone's consistently disrespecting you, one of the healthiest moves you can make is to give yourself some space from them. This doesn't mean you hate them or that you're being dramatic. It means you respect yourself enough to protect your energy. Keeping your distance isn't about being mean or ignoring people. It's about choosing where and how you spend your time and energy. Imagine your life as a limited access club. Not everyone gets a VIP pass. If someone's constantly crossing your boundaries, making you feel small, or just radiating negativity, why on earth would you keep them close? It's okay to step back. In fact, it's crucial. Distance can give you the clarity to see things as they really are, free from the fog of emotional manipulation or guilt. Think about it. When you keep people who disrespect you close, it's like inviting them to a mental and emotional buffet where they take, criticize, and judge as much as they want. And then we wonder why we feel drained, anxious, or frustrated. Giving yourself space from these people is an act of self-preservation. It's about protecting your mental health, preserving your peace, and making room for people who actually respect and uplift you. Letting go of the guilt around distancing yourself can be liberating. You're not obligated to keep disrespectful people in your orbit. I'll share a little story. I once had a friend who would always find a way to make snide comments about every choice I made. My career, my relationships, even my taste in music. At first I thought, well, that's just how they are. Maybe I'm overreacting. So I kept them around, kept trying to brush it off, thinking it wasn't that big of a deal. But over time, those little jabs started getting under my skin. I realized I was walking on eggshells, always bracing myself for the next criticism, the next joke that felt more like a punch. One day I decided to try a different approach. I didn't make a big announcement or call them out. I just started limiting my time with them. Instead of seeing them every week, I'd see them maybe once a month. And guess what? I felt lighter. I felt freer. And in that space, I realized just how toxic that friendship had become. Distancing myself gave me the mental clarity to see that I deserved better friends who would build me up instead of tearing me down. Here's the thing. Some people are going to tell you that keeping your distance is selfish. They'll say, but they're family, or you've been friends for years. It can feel uncomfortable, maybe even a little taboo to admit that someone you know well just isn't good for you. Society tells us to be loyal, forgiving, and nice. But at what cost? Here's a little secret. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. You're not here to be anyone's emotional punching bag or their constant source of validation. Sometimes the best way to show someone you've had enough is by simply stepping back. Here's where it gets deep. Keeping your distance is a powerful reminder that you are your own priority. You don't have to play the role someone else has assigned to you. You don't owe anyone access to your mind, your time, or your emotions. When you put a little space between yourself and disrespectful people, you're making a statement that your well-being comes first. And that's not just self-care, it's self-respect. Distance also gives you the chance to recenter, to focus on the relationships that matter, the ones that genuinely uplift you. Think about it. The more time you spend around people who respect you, the more confident and fulfilled you feel. The less time you spend around those who tear you down, the less room they have to impact your thoughts, your mood, and your life. I used to feel so guilty about distancing myself from people, even if they weren't treating me well. I'd think, what if they think I don't care? Or maybe I'm overreacting. But over time, I learned that distancing myself wasn't just about removing negativity. It was about creating space for growth. When I started giving myself permission to distance from disrespectful people, I felt a new kind of freedom. I had more energy, more peace, and a clearer vision of who I wanted in my life. So here's my challenge to you. Think about the people in your life who constantly disrespect you, who make you feel small or drained. Then ask yourself, do they really deserve this much access to me? 5. Hold your head high. All right, let's talk about an old-school classic that never goes out of style, holding your head high. Now, I know this might sound like generic advice, but trust me, this one is pure gold when dealing with people who don't respect you. Here's the thing. When someone is disrespectful, they're banking on making you feel small. They want you to doubt yourself, to lower your eyes, to shrink into yourself. But when you stand tall and hold your head high, you're saying without a word, I know exactly who I am, and nothing you say or do will make me feel less. Here's what's powerful about this. Confidence makes people uncomfortable, especially people who disrespect others. Why? Because they rely on the idea that their words or actions have the power to influence you, to control you in some way. When you refuse to let their disrespect touch you, when you literally stand taller and hold your head up high, you're showing them that they don't have the power to bring you down. You're unbreakable, and people who thrive on disrespect don't know what to do with that. It throws them off balance. It makes them question their power, not yours. I remember being in a situation with someone who just couldn't resist throwing little insults my way every time we met. You know the type. Always a smirk, always a joke that feels more like an attack. I used to try and brush it off, but honestly, it got to me. I found myself starting to dread being around them, feeling like I had to defend myself every time. But then one day, I decided I was done feeling small. I showed up, shoulders back, head high, and every time they made one of their little comments, I just looked them in the eye, smiled, and carried on like nothing had happened. And you know what happened? They actually started backing off. It's like they could sense that their comments weren't reaching me anymore, that I was too far above that nonsense. And suddenly, their power faded. There's something magnetic about holding your head high. It's like a silent force field that says, I'm untouchable. Now, here's where it gets a little spicy. People who don't respect you often hate seeing you confident. It messes with their worldview. They want to believe they're above you, that they've got something on you, and when you walk around confidently, it disrupts that narrative. To them, it's almost offensive. Society doesn't always know what to do with people who are unapologetically sure of themselves, especially when they refuse to let others' negativity define them. And let's be real, that can make you a bit of a target. But here's the thing. Holding your head high isn't about them, it's about you. It's about living as if you're fully aware of your worth, as if you've got nothing to prove. And that can feel like a radical act of self-respect. When you hold your head high, you're making a statement about your self-worth. You're declaring that no matter what, You see yourself as valuable, as deserving of respect, as inherently enough. And here's the deeper message. Self-worth isn't something you earn from others. It's something you claim for yourself, no matter what others think or say. You're walking through life as if you already have everything you need within you, because you do. Holding your head high is a constant reminder that you're the main character in your own story, that no one else's opinion has the right to make you feel less. And the beauty of it? The more you practice this, the less the disrespect of others will even register. You'll be too busy living in your own lane, too secure in who you are, to be bothered by anyone else's attempts to knock you down. This didn't come naturally to me. I used to be the person who'd slouch, avoid eye contact, and just kind of shrink myself when people were critical or dismissive. It felt safer to disappear in a way. But over time, I started noticing that every time I held my head high, every time I refused to let someone's negativity seep into my spirit, I felt stronger. It was like I was reminding myself over and over that I didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy. I could simply stand tall in who I was. Holding your head high isn't just about physical posture, it's about mental posture too. Walk into every room like you belong there. Don't shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. If someone makes a snarky comment, let it roll off you. They're not seeing the real you. They're projecting their own insecurities. So why let it bother you? Here's my challenge to you. Next time you feel disrespected, whether it's a subtle dig or a full-on insult, don't react. Instead, take a deep breath, pull your shoulders back, and keep your head high. Look them straight in the eye, as if to say, I see you, but I'm above this. You'll feel a rush of confidence, a sense of peace that comes from knowing that their words hold no power over you. Holding your head high is more than just good posture. It's a powerful, silent statement of your self-respect. It says, I know who I am, I value who I am, and nothing you say can change that. Because at the end of the day, respect starts with you. The more you respect yourself, the less room there is for anyone else's disrespect to stick. Stand tall, own your worth, and remember, you're worth every bit of that confidence. And there you have it. Ways to handle people who just don't get it and maybe never will. Life's too short to spend it bending over backwards for people who can't see your value.